The definition of probability is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Let's go. Okay, so for today's video, what I want to talk about is, it's going to be a two-part video. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the importance of data and the data flow process that gets you to insights. So most people that get started with data get a little bit conflated between these four stages. So this talk started with a frustrated boss telling me how to think about data. And I've found that ever since I had that talk, I've been able to pass this talk on to a lot of other different business owners and personas within the business. And they've found a lot of value of just like separating what is data at its certain stages between these four stages. And then secondly is going to be taking that framework and then talking about how we could be building AIO or chat GPT visibility insights following that same process. So it goes in four stages, and the first stage actually happens before all the data, and it's in the world around us. So before data, there's information. Right? By the way, these terminologies are not correct. Just think of them as having different meanings. So this first one is called information. So what information is think of like everything you experience in the real world. So you've got thoughts, you've got your senses. So like what you smell, hear, see, touch, anything that's really a human experience. So as an example here, you can say like an example is a funky smell, or a bright color, something like that, right? Now the next point is actually data. And the way that I think about data is it's how the computer how the computer sees information. So if you've ever seen a JSON document, you've kind of got like a category. So let's say we had color and then it was like red. So you're basically just telling the computer what the information is. And then you've got smell, funky, right? And that's very, at its core, like that's kind of how computers just accept data. Now, what happens is you need a purpose for getting data. And that's where we eventually tend towards insights, which is the final step. But knowing that a t-shirt is red is not necessarily insightful. It's factual, it is information, and it can be turned into data, but because it's living in a silo, you don't actually have any real value out of it, and therefore you can't really tell if there's an opportunity to capitalize on. So there's this stage in between here, and when this was explained to me, it was explained as analytics, but I think it could also be categorized as visualizations. So I've worked in many companies before that think they're very data driven, and what you'll see is, they look at one metric and they just go like, we had 52 sales. And then the next week they go, oh, we had 48 sales. And that's bad, And then the next week they go, oh, we had 49 sales. It went up. That's good. And if you see 52 to 48 to 49, you actually trended down if you plot that over time. But because you're only looking at it in such a siloed format, you don't actually understand what's happening with that great line of trend. So a good way to think about a visualization, or the importance of it, is actually seeing things over time. So time is another variable. You could say that time is a form of data, or like a piece of data. And then if you compare that to the number of red t-shirts bought every week, you could see that, we can see that, red t-shirt sales go up and down like this. So you can think of analytics or visualizations as being something like helpful graphs, something that you can tell a story with. Or another example, which is what I said before, I can just say like, t-shirts bought over time, or you can have another variable of X. Now this is cool. And on the surface, you can say, t-shirts bought over time is very helpful, and it is. But it's only helpful if it tells you something. So what's interesting about the data process, or this information to insights process, is you actually end up back in this qualitative realm. You don't stay in this very computery data analytics visualization realm, because what you want to know is something to do in the real world. So let's say that you see a correlation that says, let's say you had a goal and you wanted to increase the sale of red t-shirts. Instead of having red t-shirts bought over time, you started measuring red t-shirts compared to different variables. So let's say you had something like red t-shirts versus yellow t-shirts purchases, right? So now what you're doing is you're comparing two things. So it's still in that analytics and visualization stage, but then you kind of want an answer, like something that tells you something. So if I'm trying to increase my red t-shirt sales and I see that for every 2 yellow t-shirts sold, 3 red t-shirts sold, right? And this in itself, with a little bit of digging and some other data from different places and other visualizations, can be turned into like a really helpful insight if you can determine that by selling 2 yellow t-shirts, you will consistently sell 3 red t-shirts. So I forget if it's like causal correlated, but for every 2 yellow t-shirts sold, 3 red t-shirts sold doesn't necessarily tell you that that's correlated or caused by that. So if you just change that a bit to be a more helpful insight, you could say something like, for every 2 yellow t-shirts sold first, 3 red t-shirts sold after. And then that would determine that that was causal, because the 2 yellow t-shirts led to 3 red t-shirt purchases, right? And it's tough because like you can't always get that from one visualization or analytics. So it's actually up to your human information-based mind to test these hypotheses, or insights could even be turned into, potential hypotheses, so that you can use them later on, right? Now, this is great, and this works really, really well for software, because you've got this big access to data, then you can talk to your customers, and then you can get insights, and then you can capitalize on that by building new products, and then then you can do that same thing again, that build, measure, learn cycle, right? So what happens now is that we kind of have to do this for ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT is riddled with data, but none of it is given to the consumers or to the marketers or the business owners just yet. Like I said in a previous video, I think it's coming, but I think it's a hard challenge, so much of a hard challenge that they don't know just yet how to give it to business owners and marketers, right? But if you want a first mover's advantage, you might as well try. So if we take all these away, and then we just run through them again, you kind of live in the information and data stage with ChatGPT. So what I'm kind of finding is that it's more helpful to just loop these into one stage. So think of information and data as the same place, because what happens is your prompt is a request for information, but sometimes that can be conflated with data, or sometimes you can infer that things are data. So I have a process of building ChatGPT visibility, and it goes a little bit like this. So initially, if you try to think of ChatGPT visibility as the process of improving your brand's visibility, when somebody mentions a keyword, just like Google, that should involve your brand, you can simplify it by understanding these variables and then working on them. So the first one is who does show up, so your competitors, right? So if you say, who's the best florist in my area, list 3 of them, 3 people will show up. And then what happens is after that, you want to know, how do they show up? So like, what variables are used to determine those competitors? After that, you see what I call opportunities. And opportunities are the same as problems in my mind, but it's essentially which variables is my brand not satisfying, right? Next is if you go back into the last month, and you can even ask ChatGPT like this because it searches the web now and it's pretty good at understanding what you've done previously. You can see things like what work you did, so work completed. So if I'm in February, I can ask ChatGPT how my website got updated in January. And then you can actually see the successes. So which one of these opportunities actually did you capitalize on via doing this work, right? Oops. Now, what's important to know, or what I believe is important, is that ChatGPT is a little bit more like product management. ChatGPT visibility is a little bit more like product management than it is like typical marketing work. Coffee machine. So this section here with these three variables, I'm going to say that they are part of problem. Boom, boom, boom. Let's make that big here. And this part is solution, right? And it's good to separate the two because a lot of people start at solution. And I think what's really important, and if you've ever seen the double diamond of product management, which looks a little bit something like this, I'm thinking about making a problem solution video specifically for product management and ChatGPT. It goes like this. So this comes from product management. And what it says is you have to start quite divergent, and then you have to narrow down for each stage. And then you have to go out again, and then you narrow down for each stage. So for this part here, this is all about discovery. So you're trending up here, you go discovery, and then you narrow down into definition. And this point here where you're switching from problem to solution is your problem definition. But then from this point, what you want to do is you want to go up and you want to design a solution. So you want to be really expansive with your thinking. But then when you're delivering and you're testing and you're iterating, like you want to deliver a finite product. You don't want to continually scope creep. You don't want to change your opinion too much. And that's why it helps going out and then knowing that you're coming back in. Because if you and your team decide that you have a problem definition, and then because of your divergent solution style thinking, people start bringing in requirements that weren't defined earlier in time. So I think it's probably useful to say that this is over time. You'll find that it's really helpful as the manager of the solution to be like, hey, we decided that we're not solving this. Because you can't solve all the world's problems in one day. So we can sort that problem out another time, but for this solution, we're not talking about it. And it's really helpful to know what's in scope and out of scope, and that's the same with ChatGPT. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because typically the double diamond is shown as 50-50. But you can see that, I'm putting in a little bit more work here in problem than I am in solution. So I actually believe that the best way to think about designing a solution or doing product management in general is to focus most of your time on the problem. And I think I got this from Alex Hormozy. He said that if you clearly define your problem, it's very easy to understand what your solution is if you just flip it. So for instance, my shoelaces have become untied whenever I go hiking in the mountains, right? That's your problem definition. And your solution, or your solution definition, the inverse of that is some way that my shoes don't get untied when I climb in the mountains. And you can see that it's very similar, and a good example of that problem being solved is like how Salomons have those drawstring shoelaces that you can tuck in. But if you're focusing too much on solution before identifying the problem, you may never get to the right solution. You might just be lost in the weeds forever. That was a little product management side. But if we run through this little process again, you can see that each of these stages has like a way of collecting information and data. So this one you can have number of competitors, and then you can also have, number of variables. And with these, I'll probably spread these out a little bit so they're not so boom, boom, boom. Delete this for now. Don't need that either. So you have number of competitors, you have number of variables, and then with each of these you could even have things like types of competitors and then types of variables. So for instance, if you're competing with in an e-commerce space and you go, well, there are 5 competitors that come up for my keyword. Let's say I'm selling flowers again, but the types of competitors, there's like mum and pop shops, or like a typical brick and mortar, and then there's Amazon. So who you focus on and whose lunch you eat is actually a different strategy depending on who you're targeting. And then same thing for here, you can have number of variables and then types of variables. And then same thing here, let's just go down with opportunities, and then again. So with opportunities, when I say types of opportunities, I normally talk about like categories. So in a previous video, I spoke about content and credentials. So let's say you had a couple of opportunities that were content opportunities, like post case studies or add this specific page to your website, blah, blah, blah. But then the other types of opportunities is more about credentials. So like gain an industry award for this thing, get a license or a certification or do a specific sort of training, things like that. Work completed is kind of like a change log. Just focus on number of work done, or like items work done, or like action items completed. And then number of types of action items completed. So this follows off opportunities. And then finally, successes is really important because you want to know when your action items are done. And this is a big problem in product management because it's called a scope creep. Like when you go to an engineer and you say, hey, I want you to build a building. And according to Parkinson's law, I'm pretty sure it's Parkinson's law, if you give somebody an amount of time to do something, they will take that entire amount of time to do it. So engineers are really good at doing a job given the resources. And if you don't limit one of their resources, like time, they'll use the whole amount of time that you've given them. And in that scenario, you've not given them a limit, so they'll take infinite amount of time and they'll build the best damn building you've ever seen, but they'll never finish it according to you or them. So what you want to do is you want to determine some sort of like success or acceptance criteria. So number of, let's call it acceptance criteria is probably a better one here. So what do you consider to be done? What are the requirements? So let's say for each action item, you just said 3 things. So if you wanted to do a case study, for instance, well, you know that there has to be a new page URL that has the case study. You want it maybe to mention 3 specific metrics that you improved. So let's say we grew this business by this, we did this by this, did this by this, and they have to include all 3. And then let's say one was maybe like a requirement, like redact the customer's name so that you're not talking about a customer that has private information with your campaign or something like that, right? Cool. So this is why it's interesting that this is in information and data, because how you prompt and how you get these back from ChatGPT is via conversation. So what you could do is you could tell ChatGPT to put it in a table for you so that it is data, but more often than not, it's actually giving you back information. And the other thing to note is that ChatGPT is really inconsistent because it depends on probability. So you won't get back the same competitors, the same variables, the same number of opportunities every time, right? It will differ in its responses, and the models are updating, so the goalposts are always shifting. And this makes it a really hard challenge to gather insights and even develop a set of data and then analytics. But it's good enough for a business owner to keep querying ChatGPT and then gather these analytics or visualizations. So the best way that I found is do every single one of these, and you just do them over time. So let's say that you have like a visualization or an analytics gathering process. So your data process, an analytics development process. So your data process is actually at the first of every month, I'm going to query this thing that's really important to me, and I'm going to see which competitors come up. And in January, you had 5 competitors. In February, 4 of them were the same, but 1 of them was new. In January, February, March, they went back to the same 5 as the start. So you can see that like it can chop and change and get back to what it was, and depending on how you ask the question, the most important thing is to keep your prompt consistent. So if you ask ChatGPT, top 5 florists Sydney for the first 5 months, and then you said, well, I think I can ask this question better, top 5 boutique florists in Sydney, and then you think that it's all the same data. It's not. Like, if you can keep yourself consistent, what you can do is actually map out what the inconsistencies with ChatGPT is. And then you'll see over like a period of 6 to 12 to 24 months that yes, you have like this really inconsistent results that go up and down and up and down, but you will also have a lot of similarities because the visibility is pretty clear to ChatGPT who it likes referring and who it doesn't like referring based on some variables. So for this, just imagine that you plot all of these over time, right? So you could have them as, the number of things, so the number of competitors. So the number of competitors could change if you don't ask specifically for a list. The types of variables, the opportunities can change, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is kind of where it's interesting because you want to go from this stage, which is getting from competitors to variables to the opportunities that you can complete to like specific work to do. I think this is probably better to say like work to do. Is like, opportunities, work to do. Let's leave that as is. So let's say opportunities is like work to do. You come to this point here where, all right, who are the competitors in my space? Great, there are 5 people. Is that insightful? No, not really. What are the variables? Why are they being ranked first? And you're like, well, it is informative, but can I do anything about those things by knowing them? So like if I told you the reason Michael Jackson is famous is because he's a good singer, you can kind of turn back to me and say, well, what does that mean for me? I can't sing. I'm not MJ. I'm never going to be a great singer. So you need to have like a path towards becoming Michael Jackson. So then you need like an action plan. So it's like what makes somebody a good singer? And you go, well, you could do singing lessons. You could go do trials at a famous singing school and they can give you feedback and blah, 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 blah. There's all these things you can do to become a good singer. And that is where you actually get some of your first insights. When you say, hey, ChatGPT, these are my competitors and these are the variables they're ranking for. Look at my company. Give me something to do. And ChatGPT becomes super insightful in that way. And worst case scenario, this AI visibility thing, because you employ too much trust into ChatGPT, it could be somewhat wrong, right? So ChatGPT could say something like, you should upload a case study. And then you're like, okay. And then you upload a case study, and then lo and behold, one case study doesn't put you on top of the visibility results for ChatGPT. And you can be in two minds about that. You can be like, what a waste of time. I can't believe I just did this. And then you could be like you could have another perspective, which is like, ChatGPT genuinely thought I needed this case study. And now I have an extra case study. Was it so much of a red herring that I should be frustrated that this crazy LLM suggested that I should do this thing that I probably agreed was a good idea, but because I didn't get the result I wanted, now I'm unhappy? Or do you kind of just say, that's the risk of developing my AI visibility. Sometimes it's going to hallucinate, sometimes it's going to give you the wrong opinion, but let's hope that most of the time you can trust it, especially as it gets better and better through time, right? So now what you can see is that you've got these insights that are being developed for you, and then you can even graph these things over time too. So opportunities, so like the work to do, let's say that every month you queried and you got the same sort of types of work until you did them. And then those opportunities changed. Or maybe before that, the variables changed. So what we're seeing here for the first time, well, not for the first time, it's probably been done many, many times with many different things, but as marketers, we depend on data sets. So when you use Google, you use SEMrush, you use Ahrefs, you can use Google Keyword Planner, Trends, and then there's your own personal data that you can use too. So like how many clicks, impressions, what's your click-through rate, what's your conversion rate, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, great, this is really easy to optimize for because I have all this data. If you don't have data, and especially in a place where information and data are kind of one of the same thing, because Google, when it gives you data, it gives you numbers. It's like, this is how many clicks you got, 3. This is how many search terms you're using, 5. This is how many searches you got per search term, right? But ChatGPT, you go, how many competitors in my space? And it kind of gives you a verbose answer, which is like, oh, you're very competitive in your space, but let me tell you about these 5 other guys. And then you prompt it again, and those 5 other guys may not even be in the question, depending on how you prompted, where you prompted from, or the fact that it just changes based on probability. I've come up with a quote, and it's off the typical, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and expecting different results. And I think from working with ChatGPT and trying to analyze it again and again, I've updated my opinion of that quote. I've changed it to this. The definition of probability is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. I know this was a little bit more of a messier video, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk through with what this means for your specific business. But regardless, I hope it was informative and I hope it helped somewhat. Have a good one. Bye.